Welcome to Leading by Example, Upholding Standards Without Compromise. I am your host, Dr. Vaughn, inspiring excellence, one lesson at a time. Are you ready to be better within your world and become the standard bearer within your organization or wherever you are? Leaders, aspirants, every one of you, all of us influence our culture, the organization's culture, our workplace's culture through actions taken both inside and outside of the workplace. I founded Ontero Solutions upon integrity, customer satisfaction, and attention to detail, specifically executive coaching and leadership development. Join in for fun, practical, and educational stories as I share lessons, both the good and the bad, that I have learned in my 20 years of leadership and management experience. Leading by example starts now. Hello. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand spanking new radio show that is set to challenge the status quo, inspire change, and empower you to lead by example in a world where standards are often compromised. I'm your host, Dr. Vaughn, and I'm thrilled to be on this journey of discovery and transformation with you. Have you ever wondered why standards seem to erode in our society, whether it's in the realm of ethics, business, politics, or even our personal lives? Why do we often find ourselves in situations where principles and values are sacrificed for short-term gains and convenience? These questions lie at the heart of our show, Leading by Example, Upholding Standards Without Compromise. Over the course of the show, we will delve deep into the complex landscape of compromised standards, seeking answers, insights, and most importantly, solutions. So are you ready to learn more about leading by example? If so, let's begin. Today, we begin a new series titled Upholding the Unspeakable, tackling taboo topics in leadership ethics. This series will be juicy as it addresses critical but often avoided topics in leadership. This series will provide listeners with practical advice on how to approach ethical dilemmas from a leadership perspective to help foster a transparent, accountable, and ethical organizational climate. So this first episode of this series is titled The Ethics of Whistleblowing, and we will explore the ethical considerations surrounding whistleblowing and its impact on leadership and organizational culture. So the discussion points for today's episode, we will understand whistleblowing, first by defining it and discussing the circumstances that might necessitate such actions. We will talk about the risks and repercussions of whistleblowing, and we'll analyze the personal and professional risks faced by whistleblowers. And then the third and final discussion point, we'll talk about the legal and organizational protections that can be implemented to support ethical whistleblowing. So just before we delve in, here are some recent and current examples of whistleblowing. So the first one being Frances Haugen and Facebook in 2021. Frances Haugen, or Haugen, I'm probably saying that wrong, a former Facebook employee, leaked some internal documents revealing that Facebook knew its platforms were causing harm to users, particularly teenagers, and was not taking adequate steps to mitigate these issues. Haugen's testimony before the U.S. Congress brought significant attention to the negative impacts of social media. My second example is Elizabeth Holmes and her company, Theranos. Whistleblowers Tyler Schultz and Erica Chung exposed fraudulent practices at Theranos, which was a health technology company that claimed to revolutionize blood testing. Their revelations led to investigations and the eventual conviction of the CEO, Elizabeth Holmes, for fraud. And the last example is the Boeing 737 MAX scandal, 2019, really up until now. Boeing employees raised concerns about the safety of the 737 MAX aircraft. Whistleblower complaints highlighted issues with the plane's design and the certification process, contributing to the grounding of the aircraft and significant scrutiny of Boeing's practices. So I'm sure you probably remember seeing some of those stories in the news, especially, what happened to some of the employees, or, I don't want to say what happened to themselves, but there were some questionable expirations of life. I'll put it like that. So, I love stories and parables. So just to kind of set the foundation for this episode, I'm going to share Nathan's parable. It's called Nathan's parable. And so just a brief preview in case you're not familiar with this biblical parable. King David was the second king of Israel. He committed adultery with Bathsheba, who was the wife of Uriah, one of his loyal soldiers. And to cover up the ensuing pregnancy, David arranged for Uriah to be placed in the front lines of battle, ensuring his death. After Uriah's death, David married Bathsheba. The child born to Bathsheba became ill and died, fulfilling Nathan's prophecy. Later, David faced ongoing strife within his family, including the rebellion of his son Absalom. So that's the Cliff Notes version, right? So here we go. So the scriptural reference is 2 Samuel chapter 12, verses 1 through 14. And what I'm going to read to you is from the NLT version. I like it because it's real common, easier to understand. I put it like that. So it's called Nathan Rebukes David. So the Lord sent Nathan, the prophet, to tell David this story. There were two men in a certain town. One was rich and one was poor. The rich man owned a great many sheep and cattle. The poor man owned nothing but one little lamb he had bought. He raised that little lamb, and it grew up with his children. It ate from the man's own plate and drank from his cup. He cuddled it in his arms like a baby daughter. One day, a guest arrived at the home of the rich man. But instead of killing an animal from his own flock or herd, he took the poor man's lamb and killed it and prepared it for his guest. David was furious. As surely as the Lord lives, he vowed, any man who would do such a thing deserves to die. He must repay 4 lambs to the poor man for the one he stole and for having no pity. Then Nathan the prophet said to David, you are that man. The Lord, the God of Israel says, I anointed you king of Israel and saved you from the power of Saul. I gave you your master's house and his wives and the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. And if that had not been enough, I would have given you much, much more. Why then have you despised the word of the Lord and done this horrible deed? For you have murdered Uriah the Hittite with the sword of the Ammonites and stolen his wife. From this time on, your family will live by the sword because you have despised me by taking Uriah's wife to be your own. This is what the Lord says. Because of what you have done, I will cause your own household to rebel against you. I will give your wives to another man before your very eyes, and he will go to bed with them in public view. You did it secretly, but I will make this happen to you openly in the sight of all Israel. Then David confessed his guilt to Nathan. I have sinned against the Lord. Nathan replied, yes, but the Lord has forgiven you, and you won't die for this sin. Nevertheless, because you have shown utter contempt for the word of the Lord by doing this, your child will die. So 3 moral lessons from this parable. The first one being accountability and justice. This parable emphasizes the importance of holding individuals, even those in positions of great power, accountable for their actions. David, despite being king, was not above God's law. The second moral lesson is the courage to speak truth to power. Nathan demonstrated immense courage in confronting David. This underscores the moral duty to speak out against wrongdoing, regardless of the potential risk involved. And thirdly, the power of parables. Nathan's use of a parable to reveal David's sin is a powerful reminder of the effectiveness of storytelling in conveying moral truths and prompting self-reflection. Nathan's rebuke of David serves as a timeless lesson on the importance of ethical behavior, the courage to confront wrongdoing, and the possibility of redemption through sincere repentance. So that was some tea, y'all. I love that parable. Just a question for yourself to ponder. Would you respond like King David did by being called out in the form of a parable? That was a bitter pill to swallow. Would a parable make it softer for you to take in and listen to, or, just straight up? I don't know. Think about that. I thought about it. I was like, wow. So this takes us to our first discussion point with this nice little foundation of the parable as the cornerstone, if you will, for our discussion. So in our first discussion point, we'll understand whistleblowing and we'll define it. So whistleblowing refers to the act of exposing any kind of information or activity that is deemed illegal, unethical, or not correct within any organization. This information can be revealed to the public or to those in positions of authority. Whistleblowers are often employees or former employees who report misconduct to external parties, typically because internal channels have failed to address the issues effectively. Now, what are the circumstances that necessitate whistleblowing? Like, why would somebody go to someone outside or an agency outside of their organization to highlight some wrongdoing? Well, whistleblowing might become necessary under several circumstances, including but not limited to illegal activities. For example, fraud. There could be some financial misconduct, including embezzlement, false reporting, or misappropriation of funds. There could be corruption, such as bribery, kickbacks, or other forms of corruption that violate laws and ethical standards. Or there could be some type of environmental violation, activities that harm the environment, such as illegal dumping of toxic waste, or violations of environmental regulations or other environmentally destructive practices. There could also be ethical violations, for example, with discrimination, unethical practices such as discrimination based on race, gender, age, or other protected characteristics. There could be some harassment, workplace harassment, including sexual harassment, bullying, or other forms of intimidation. And there could also be violations of human rights, such as activities that violate human rights, such as forced labor, child labor, or unsafe working conditions. I don't know if you all remember years ago in the news, I don't remember how long ago it's been, but I won't call it the organization because they weren't alone. But, there were child laborers in their factories making, garments that I know that I was enjoying wearing at the time. But another cause or another reason why a whistleblower may call out is because of public health and safety concerns. For example, there could be product safety issues, such as manufacturing defects, unsafe products, or failure to comply with the established safety standards that could harm consumers, the end consumer who ultimately uses the product. There could also be workplace safety violations, such as unsafe working conditions and a failure to comply with occupational health and safety regulations or the endangerment of employees' health. Some other things are mismanagement and inefficiencies within the organization, such as a gross, mismanagement of resources that causes potential harm to the organization, and a negligence of duty or a failure to follow standard operating procedures that result in harm to people or the organization. And then there's also there could also be a violation of ethical standards that causes a whistleblower to sound the whistle or to blow the whistle. There could be a conflict of interest from situations where personal interests interfere with professional duties, leading to unethical decision-making. And then there could also be a breach of confidentiality, which results in the unauthorized disclosure of confidential information, whether it be about individuals, the organization, or its clients. So here are some ethical considerations and challenges to ponder. Whistleblowing is a critical mechanism for maintaining ethical standards and accountability within organizations. It's very vital for oversight. However, it involves complex ethical dilemmas and potential risks for the whistleblower, necessitating careful consideration and ideally robust legal protections. So whistleblowing raises several ethical considerations and challenges. First, there is a duty to report versus loyalty. Whistleblowers often face a conflict between their duty to report wrongdoing and their loyalty to their employer or colleagues. As I go through this, I'm only going to highlight 5 of the ethical considerations and challenges, but I want you to think about these. So we just talked about duty to report versus loyalty. The next one being retaliation. Whistleblowers may face retaliation from their employer or colleagues, including job loss, demotion, or harassment. Legal protections. The extent of legal protection for whistleblowers varies by jurisdiction and can influence the decision to report misconduct. Certainly, we know that. There's also public perception to contend with. Whistleblowers can be viewed as heroes for exposing wrongdoing or as traitors for breaching loyalty to their organization. And then lastly, a moral responsibility. The moral obligation to prevent harm and uphold justice often drives individuals to blow the whistle, despite potential personal and professional risks. So this takes us to discussion point 2. What are the risks and repercussions? We're going to analyze some of the personal and professional risks faced by whistleblowers. Whistleblowing, while a critical act for ethical and legal accountability, involves significant personal and professional risks. Whistleblowers often face various forms of retaliation and negative consequences that can profoundly impact their lives. I'm sure you heard in the news, when someone comes forward about some wrongdoing within an organization. I mean, that's all you hear in the news is this person's name. That takes a huge amount of courage, to stick with your truth and to move forward in spite of. But with that said, I'll present an analysis of 6 risks and repercussions faced by whistleblowers. So there are personal risks. The risk to your emotional and with personal risk, there's emotional and psychological stress. For example, a whistleblower faces isolation. Whistleblowers may experience isolation and ostracism from colleagues, friends, and even family, especially when there's negative publicity surrounding it. Whistleblowers may face mental health issues from the stress of whistleblowing. It can lead to anxiety and depression and other mental health problems. And then there's a constant fear or harm that can lead to chronic stress and mental exhaustion. The physical risks of whistleblowing are threats and intimidation. Whistleblowers may receive threats to their personal safety or the safety of their loved ones. And violence. In extreme cases, whistleblowers have faced physical violence or harm. So, with that, just think about some of the stories we've read in the news, especially concerning Boeing. So the professional risks are career damage, such as job loss, blacklisting, and career stagnation. So the most immediate professional risk, of course, is, the termination of a whistleblower from their current position. They may be blacklisted because they find it difficult to find new employment due to being blacklisted within their industry, because everybody knows you. You have this little, nasty mark on you now, like a, scarlet letter, if you will. And then whistleblowers may also face career advancement opportunity stagnation because, your opportunities are significantly hindered. Even if, the whistleblower maintains the job, if that event was made public, everybody's going to know about it. Even if it's not on your resume, they're going to know about it. And, with that said, there's damage to your reputation, if you're a whistleblower. Whistleblowers may be labeled as troublemakers or disloyal, tarnishing their professional reputation, which is totally unfair, and then questioning of their integrity. Colleagues and future employers may question the whistleblower's integrity and motivations, even if, there's proof, or even when there's proof backing up the claim. Some financial risks incurred by whistleblowers are legal costs. The litigation, the cost alone of litigation, the legal battles, requires significant and substantial financial resources for legal representation. And then, if you lose your job, there's a potential loss of income, especially if, you're without a job for a prolonged period of time and, you run the risk of financial instability. And then, lastly, within this, little category of financial risk, reduce future earnings. There's lowered employability. Whistleblowers experience difficulty in securing new employment, which can lead to lower future earnings and reduced career growth. Again, totally unfair when you think about, the reason or the rationale behind whistleblowing to begin with. And the social risks, whistleblowers face social ostracism. Whistleblowers may be stigmatized in their communities and social circles, and they, may face a loss of social support from friends and colleagues because, even though people understand that it may be the right thing to do, some friends and colleagues may distance themselves, which may lead to a loss of social support networks. If any of you have been, a friend or within a social network of a whistleblower, I would love to hear your stories about, how you helped, how you encouraged, how you supported, while this, person went through, this significant career challenge, that, it's not just a career challenge because it permeates so many facets of their, a whistleblower's life as we previously discussed. And then there are also organizational repercussions, internal retaliation, hostile work environment, or demotion. For example, if a whistleblower chooses to stay within the organization, this can lead to a hostile work environment, including harassment and discrimination. Or, the whistleblower may be demoted or given an undesirable job assignment as a form of punishment. We all know that's not cool. And we touched lightly on this earlier about the legal aspect of it, but, there could be defamation lawsuits against the whistleblower. An organization may, decide to sue the whistleblower for defamation in an attempt to intimidate and silence. Or there may be a counterclaim from the organization against the whistleblower, alleging a breach of confidentiality or other contractual obligation. Just to delve a little bit deeper about the societal piece, there can be a chilling effect. The severe consequences faced by whistleblowers can deter others from reporting wrongdoing, which will lead to further unchecked misconduct. And then the ethical dilemma of it all, just between reporting misconduct and facing retaliation, creates a challenging situation for potential whistleblowers. And then the public perception of it all. Is a whistleblower a hero or a traitor? For example, the Snowden case study. I mean, there's so many, he's been in the news so much, and he's not the only one, but whistleblowers can be perceived variably as heroes who stood up for justice or as traitors who betrayed their organization. And, did you know that while I was, preparing for this particular podcast, did you know that within the realm of national security, whistleblowers are exempt from protection? So these protections that we're going to talk about in discussion point 3, our final discussion point, they're protected from that in national security. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. But whistleblowing involves a delicate balance between the duty to expose wrongdoing and the personal, professional, and social risk involved. Despite legal protections in many jurisdictions, whistleblowers often face significant challenges and repercussions. Understanding these risks is essential for creating a supportive environment that encourages ethical behavior and protects those who speak out against misconduct. So this is, a perfect segue into our final discussion point of protective measures. What legal and organizational protections can be implemented to support ethical whistleblowing? So to encourage ethical whistleblowing and protect those who expose wrongdoing, there's a robust framework of legal and organizational protections that are essential. And here are 4 key types that can be implemented to support and protect whistleblowers. The first being, of course, legal protections, whistleblower protection laws. There are anti-retaliation statutes, which are laws that explicitly prohibit retaliation against whistleblowers, including termination, demotion, harassment, and any form of discrimination. There are also confidentiality provisions, which are legal measures to ensure the confidentiality of whistleblowers, protecting their identity from being disclosed without their consent. And then lastly, under this, legal protections, under this section, the right to sue, which is a provision of legal rights for whistleblowers to sue their employers if they face retaliation, with potential remedies including reinstatement, back pay, and compensation for damages. There are also financial incentives and rewards, such as bounty programs. Bounty programs are financial rewards for whistleblowers who provide information that leads to successful enforcement actions, particularly in cases of financial fraud and securities violations. And then there's also legal aid, access to legal assistance and funding to help whistleblowers navigate the legal process and afford necessary legal representation, which can be, quite exhaustive depending on what it is. The third protection is the regulatory bodies and enforcement agencies. So whistleblower offices, organizations can establish dedicated offices or units within regulatory bodies to handle whistleblower complaints, investigate allegations, and provide guidance. And then independent oversight. creation of independent agencies or ombudsman offices to oversee whistleblower protection programs and ensure the impartial handling of cases. So the next category is organizational protections as the second type. So there's internal reporting mechanisms, such as the anonymous hotlines, providing anonymous reporting channels, such as hotlines or online platforms to allow whistleblowers to report misconduct without revealing their identity. And then there's also clear procedures, which are accessible procedures for reporting misconduct, including step-by-step guidelines on how to file a complaint and what to expect during the investigation process. So if you're a leader within an organization and some of these protections that I'm, rattling off are missing, these are just some ideas. There's also anti-retaliation policies. For example, zero tolerance, a firm organizational stance against retaliation with clear consequences for those who retaliate against whistleblowers will be helpful. Support systems is another protection. There could be organizations can implement whistleblower liaison officers, which are these are specific individuals designated within the organization to act as liaison officers to provide support and guidance to whistleblowers throughout the process. And then counseling and support, offering access to counseling, such as mental health services and other forms of support to help whistleblowers cope with the phenomenal emotional and psychological stress of reporting misconduct. The third type is cultural and ethical measures that may be implemented. So promote a speak up culture. Leadership needs a commitment to ethical behavior and transparency, and they need to be able to demonstrate a top-down approach to encourage whistleblowing and ethical conduct. And then, training and awareness programs. I haven't seen any recently, but at least within the organizations that I've been a part of, and I don't want to put it out too much, but regular training and awareness programs to educate employees about their rights and responsibilities to whistleblowing and to reinforce the importance of reporting misconduct. We talked a little bit about, earlier about recognition and reward programs, public acknowledgement, recognize whistleblowers and their contributions to the organization's integrity and ethical standards. That would be super huge. And then our last measure is international and cross-border protections for, those global organizations. They may come in the form of global standards and agreements, such as international treaties or cross-border cooperation. Cooperation between countries to protect whistleblowers, especially in multinational organizations and global operations. And then asylum and safe havens. So providing an asylum or a safe haven for whistleblowers who face severe threats or persecution in their home country would be another protection that could be implemented. So implementing comprehensive legal and organizational protections is crucial for fostering an environment where whistleblowers can report misconduct without fear of retaliation. By establishing clear reporting mechanisms, enforcing anti-retaliation policies, and promoting a culture of transparency and accountability, organizations can support ethical whistleblowing and ensure that wrongdoing is promptly addressed and rectified. Again, whistleblowing should not be looked at as a bad thing. It's clearly needed for oversight. So as we conclude this episode on the ethics of whistleblowing, we've journeyed through the complex landscape of what it means to be a whistleblower, the profound personal and professional risk involved, and the protective measures that can support ethical whistleblowing. We also highlighted historical anecdotes and a timeless biblical parable like Nathan's courageous confrontation with King David, which underscores the enduring significance of speaking truth to power. Can you imagine how much courage that took for the prophet Nathan to call King David out? Whistleblowing is not merely an act of exposing wrongdoing. It is a profound ethical duty that upholds the principles of justice, transparency, and accountability. Whistleblowers play a crucial role in safeguarding the integrity of institutions, whether they are government bodies, corporations, or other organizations. Their actions often come at a great personal cost, highlighting the need for robust legal protections and supportive organizational cultures that encourage and protect those who dare to speak out. So we talked a little bit about some of those, but again, the moral lessons from this particular episode are clear. Accountability, no one is above the law, and holding individuals accountable is essential for justice. Courage. Speaking out against wrongdoing requires immense bravery, especially when faced with potential retaliation. Integrity. Upholding ethical standards and acting with integrity are crucial, even when it involves great personal sacrifice. Repentance and forgiveness. Acknowledging one's mistakes and seeking forgiveness are fundamental to personal and collective growth. King David, he repented. And then consequences. All actions have consequences. And while forgiveness is possible, accountability remains key, especially within our organizations. So as we wrap up this episode, remember that the path of a whistleblower is fraught with challenges, but their contributions to a just and transparent society are invaluable. Let us continue to advocate for environments where truth can flourish and justice can prevail, ensuring that whistleblowers are celebrated rather than silenced. So thank you for joining us in this exploration of the ethics of whistleblowing. Stay tuned for our next episode, which is titled Navigating Nepotism and Favoritism, where we will continue to uncover and discuss critical but often avoided leadership topics. Before we part ways, I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on today's discussion and consider how you can implement some of the strategies we've discussed in your own leadership practices. Visit our website at www.enterosolutions.com. That's I'm sorry, I can't even spell. That's ENTERO solutions.com to access more resources on leadership and join our community to stay updated on upcoming episodes and all things Ontero. If today's conversation sparked any thoughts or questions, or if you have stories of ethical leadership to share, please reach out through our social media channels or email us directly. I would love to hear from you and learn about your journeys in leadership. And if you found value in today's episode, please share it with a friend or colleague who might also benefit. Help spread the message of ethical leadership far and wide, and together, let's build a future where honor and integrity are at the heart of leadership. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of our podcast, The Ethics of Whistleblowing. We hope you found our discussion insightful and thought-provoking. Whistleblowing is a complex and courageous act, and it's vital that we understand the ethical, personal, and societal implications it carries. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Your feedback helps us bring more content to you that matters. You can also follow us on social media for updates and join the conversation using the hashtag Ethics of Whistleblowing. Remember, ethics and integrity are the cornerstone of a just society. Whether you find yourself in a position to blow the whistle or simply as a supporter of those who do, your actions make a difference. Until next time, stay informed, stay ethical, and never, ever underestimate the power of your voice. Tremendous thank yous to my producer, Ms. Moxie Rogers, for always keeping us on target. Please tune in for the next episode on Thursday, September 5th, 2024 at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where the topic is Navigating Nepotism and Favoritism. This is Dr. Vaughn signing off. Stay inspired and continue to lead by example. Goodbye. You have been listening to Leading by Example, upholding standards without compromise. I am your host, Dr. Vaughn, bringing you inspiring excellence, one lesson at a time. Tune in to Transformation Talk Radio every first and third Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific for fun, practical, and educational stories as I share lessons, both the good and the bad, that I have learned in my 20 years of leadership and management experience. As we go through and learn these lessons, I would ask you to be thinking about those lessons that you bring that you could share for potential, hey, you may even want to be a guest on our show. So think about those lessons as we continue to explore inspiring excellence one lesson at a time. For more information, please visit www.enterosolutions.com. That's ENTERO.